Should say good afternoon.
Is that on up to?
It's on. Yeah.
Okay, very good. It is 1:30. We'll call the Cumberland County Finance meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call, please, Angela.
Commissioner Niederer.
I am here.
Commissioner Fauci.
I'm here.
Commissioner Eichelberger.
Present.
All right. We will open the floor up to public comment. There's no one in the room offering public comment. Angela, is there anyone online?
No.
Okay. We'll go into the approval of the minutes from the April 9th meeting and entertain a motion for approval of that.
I'll move to approve.
Also,
It's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up, we have discussion and approval of the PCCD 2024-2025 Intermediate Punishment Program Grant. And with us, we have our head of adult probation, Darby Chrisley. Darby, if you'd want to speak to that, please.
yes, this is an existing grant that we have, and what we're asking for, it's not really an increase in the grant. What we typically do is we don't fulfill all of the funds available in that grant throughout the calendar year. So we're doing some modification requests to make sure that we get the most of the grant. And some of the modifications that we're going to include are drug and alcohol funds for drug and alcohol treatment for restricted probation clients, salaries and benefits of drug testers, and bus passes for restricted probation clients. So it's really a modification on our end about the budget, the money that we use.
Okay. And it is all within keeping within the grant parameters, and you don't think that there will be any pushback as to it not being acceptable?
Yes, we've been working with Katie Zimmerman and PCCD, and we reached out to PCCD, and they are in agreement with what we're asking for.
Perfect. Does Jean, do you have any questions of Darby at this time?
I do not. Thank you, Darby.
You're welcome.
Gary, do you have any questions?
Finance, any input on this?
No, I think it's great.
Okay, great.
All right. I entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll move to approve.
We'll have Gary as a motion, and Jean, will you second?
Yes.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up, Darby is also going to give us an overview of some pretrial services and what's happening in adult probation. Sorry for the delay here.
It's okay.
I gave him a
It's
heads
more
up.
than okay.
Well, thanks for the invitation to talk a little bit about the outcomes of trial services. It was back in December of 2022 when we first pitched pretrial services to the Finance Committee. And I certainly want to thank the committee for seeing value in the program and approving the funds for our 2 additional staff members. The program officially began on May of 2023, and of course, at the direction of the President Judge. We did use other models to develop the program. Following the research was also extremely important in developing the program. We have credible science from research and studies of the criminal justice system over the past 20 years that shows us what works and what doesn't work to improve recidivism rates. We use the information to put together the perfect blend of compliance to ensure public safety, needs-based to help people on pretrial supervision to improve their status, and data collection to make sure that we were achieving the desired outcomes. But before we get into the outcomes, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about how pretrial services works. Pretrial services is designed to assist the bail authority, primarily the MDJs, but it is also helpful to the common pleas court judges who occasionally set bail. The process begins when the police charge a person with a felony or misdemeanor crime. The police, of course, have the discretion to have the person summoned before the MDJ or take the person into custody to ensure their appearance at a preliminary arraignment where bail is set. Most times people with serious charges, or if they pose a threat of flight or a risk to the community, they're taken into custody. The defendant is taken to the booking center at our jail, where a video preliminary arraignment occurs within 12 hours. These defendants are the focus of pretrial services, the ones that are taken into custody. When the MDJ conducts the preliminary arraignment, usually one of two things occur. The defendant is released without entering the general population of the jail under the condition that they participate in pretrial services. The second thing that could occur is that the defendant is committed to the jail with monetary bail and a condition if bail is posted, they participate in pretrial services. In 2024, we had 386 defendants that were in those two categories. Our pretrial officers meet with the defendant after the preliminary arraignment to begin the screening process. They conduct a face-to-face interview. They gather information such as employment, financial, and educational history, and information about drug and alcohol or mental health concerns. A risk assessment that predicts the person's risk to reoffend or flee is completed. The information is put into a report form and presented to the MDJ prior to the defendant's next appearance, and that would be for the preliminary hearing, which usually occurs 14 days from the initial bail hearing. The MDJ will use the information to modify the previous bail conditions as the MDJ determines appropriate. It could be a reduction or an increase in monetary bail, adding bail conditions or removing conditions that were previously imposed. Equally important, our pretrial officers supervise defendants who are released to the community pending trial to ensure the defendant appears at future court hearings while guarding against rearrest. Our risk assessment tool determines the amount of contacts the officer makes with the defendant. A high risk score requires 2 face-to-face contacts per month, primarily in the community. Moderate risk are seen 1 time per month and low risk as needed. The pretrial officers are ensuring the bail conditions are followed. Equally important, the officer helps the defendant to succeed, assisting them with employment opportunities, housing, getting them evaluated and into treatment. We're just teaching them skills that allows them to make better decisions. The officer provides the sentencing judge with a written report that highlights the defendant's progress while on bail, both good and bad, which is considered by the court at the time of sentencing, which typically occurs within 6 to 12 months of being placed on pretrial supervision. So prior to establishing pretrial services in 2023, none of these things were occurring. Essentially, these very important bail decisions were made blindly without proper vetting to safeguard the public. The recidivism rates, they weren't good at that time. 33% of the pretrial defendants released from CCP were rearrested within 1 year of release. And that was the main reason why pretrial services were established in Cumberland County. So if I could, I'd see if I can get this up, just push the button.
Just use the arrow keys on the keyboard.
Okay.
Right at the bottom by the space bar.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Darby, how many counties across the state do you know are participating in this kind of program?
So as far as class 3 counties, I believe all of them have pretrial services. I think it's more familiar or more common with larger counties.
Okay.
And the majority of smaller counties. So off the top of my head, I would say probably 30 to 40 counties across the state.
Okay.
I will say there's different ways to handle that. Some of them, for example, in Dauphin County is handled through a nonprofit.
Okay.
And there's quite a few of those. Some of them are ran through the court administrator's office, and some of them are through the probation office, similar to ours. The difference being, it seems that those ones handled through the probation office are very heavy compliance. And the ones that are handled through nonprofits are usually look at defendant needs. So I think what we've established here is kind of a blend of that. And, when I was working closely with Allegheny County, who has a premier program, that was one of the concerns that they had with the probation department, is it's so much heavy compliance that all the needs that the defendants have kind of get lost, and it doesn't help with recidivism rates.
Jordan, when you say about nonprofits, are they specifically formed for that purpose, or are they existing nonprofits that are trying to?
That I don't know. I don't know. So we did establish 4 performance measures using baseline rates prior to pretrial services and comparing those rates to the data collected on the 574 people referred to pretrial services from the beginning of May of 2023 until December 31st of 2024. So I was talking about the calendar year of 2024. We've extended this to go from the time we started until December 31st. That's how we got 574 people. So the first is appearance rate. We want to know if defendants on pretrial supervision are showing up for hearings. Showing up, of course, makes the court operate more efficient. If the defendant doesn't appear, an arrest warrant is issued, and it's costly to issue an arrest warrant. You got staff needs to prepare and file the warrant. Sheriff would serve the warrant. The jail would house the defendant until the court appearance. Also add in arrest situations where violent episodes occur between law enforcement and the defendant. So a goal of pretrial services is to increase appearance rates. We routinely send court reminders via text and emails. The research also tells us that telephone and personal communication are the most effective. And as you can see by the slide, I believe our approach is working. Over 93% of the defendants, of that 574 defendants ordered into pretrial services, showed up for the court hearings. And it's just not one court hearing. Once they get placed on pretrial services, there's typically 4 to 5 court hearings to get them to sentence.
So if you compounded that out over 4 or 5 different appearances, that's really meaningful in the scope of the court calendar.
Yes. And I will say, I mean, we're spot on with it because the 93.6% percentage of appearance rates, we have taken all 574 of those defendants, and we've put them in the state system and identified them. And anytime there's an arrest, there's a fingerprint, there's a warrant, we are notified. So we're dead on with the 93.6. Now I will say the 75% because it was before pretrial services. We really didn't have an exact figure, so that's several data points put together, and that's the reason why we extended this and looked at this slide, because we just want to confirm the data we had was accurate. And I think this kind of nails it. And this slide even provides more evidence that the appearance rates are increasing. This is the number of warrants issued by the district attorney for failing to appear at hearings from 2016 until 2024. The COVID years you see from 2020 to 2022 are basically throwaway years because there was an effort at that time to keep people out of jail to reduce the spread of COVID. And as you can see, the DA issued 777 warrants in 2024. That's a 200 warrant decrease from past years. And I know Commissioner Fauci, when we were together last time, had mentioned about the ripple effect. And I think this really demonstrates the ripple effect because if we decrease those warrants, it is really less workload for other aspects of the system, for the court, for the DA, for the PD, for the sheriff, and even the jail when we have reduced warrants and they don't have to be filed, there doesn't have to be court appearances and so forth.
Debbie, is there a goal that you're hoping to hit at 2025? Like, what would be a good progression? Another 100 down, or is that a lot to expect?
I think that's a lot to expect.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just glad to see 200 now.
I know, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
It'll be interesting next year to see where we're at with this.
Right.
If it stays around there, if it increases, it decreases.
The obviously the COVID years, as you explained,
Yeah.
pretty significant difference there from 17, 18, and then starting back up at 19. Any idea what's driving that?
No idea. I think probably when you look at 22 and 23, they may be catch-up years from COVID. They made it increase a little bit because they didn't want to increase the jail population. So I don't know as far as how many warrants are being filed.
I'm wondering if 17, if the opioids were really hitting in Cumberland County at that time.
That would have been around the time frame.
So 23 is a partial year with the program in place.
Yes,
And 24 is the first full year.
correct. So our second performance measure is the safety rate. So this is essentially shows the recidivism rates. If we keep people from being arrested, of course, there are less victims and our community is safer. Pretrial service officers identify the defendant's risk to reoffend, as I mentioned earlier, using our validated risk assessment tool. And they give the most attention to those who score higher risk. They also identify factors that lead to rearrest, such as criminal thinking, peer associates, family issues, drug and alcohol, mental health issues, and put a plan in place to address those issues. The pretrial officers have referred countless people to inpatient, outpatient treatment. Before pretrial services, these issues were left fester with defendants awaiting trial, which I think led to the higher recidivism rates that I spoke about previously. And as you can see by this slide, over 96% of the people ordered into pretrial services remained arrest-free while in the program. The 67%, the one prior to pretrial service, was actually a study that PCC did for us in combination with IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I think that was 2019, where they actually looked at the jail population and they come up with the recidivism rate being 33%. So that's a good comparison.
And Darby, your team is familiar with the mental health walk-in center.
Very much so. I had 2 officers there yesterday.
Okay,
They love it. It's
perfect.
very accommodating.
It helps with the folks that you're working with.
Much better than we had before, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Our third measure is the concurrence rate. This measure, the assessed risk level. This measures the risk level of the pretrial defendant. So it answers the questions: are bail decisions equal with the assessed risk? We of course don't want low-risk defendants incarcerated with moderate or high-risk people, because the research tells us mixing low risk with high risk people increases the recidivism rates of low risk. It's a basic concept that is often overlooked because it's not practical to separate by risk, particularly in a correctional facility. On the graph, you're going to see 2 bars. The blue bar shows that 41% of pretrial defendants incarcerated at CCP were assessed at low risk to reoffend prior to pretrial services. So even before we had pretrial services in place, we started risk assessment in the probation department in 2016. At that time, we got the prison involved, and they were also doing risk assessments on people coming in the door. So they were essentially the pretrial people. So we had that data. So that's where that data came from. And before pretrial services in 2019, 41% of those people that were taken back behind in the jail, who were admitted to the jail, scored low risk. So, and as you see on the graph, the gray bar shows that now 46% of the defendants ordered into pretrial services scored low risk to reoffend. So essentially what we did is we flipped the script. Low risk defendants are now safely being supervised by pretrial service officers in the community. And I think this is huge because it allows the low risk defendants to support themselves and their families. It is low risk to the community, and the county is not financially burdened to keep them in jail, as was previously the case.
I think that's so important, Darby. That point that you just made about people being able to take care of their families, and I think that's so important.
Yes, yeah. This is one of the better outcomes, I think, of that we're seeing with pretrial services, because the research says that the low risk people are self-adjusting, and you really don't need to have too many interventions. Obviously, if they have needs, we're going to go out and help them out, but we aren't actively supervising those people that we have on supervision.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And our final measurement is length of stay. We want to know how many days the pretrial population is held in jail. If people can be safely supervised in the community, it puts the jail in a better situation by decreasing overcrowding concerns. So 10 days was the average length of stay for the pretrial population. These are the defendants that I spoke about that were initially remanded to jail on bail and were eventually released to pretrial services. We don't have any comparison information on this. We weren't keeping records of this prior to pretrial services. However, the warden does tell me that the average number of days served both for pretrial and sentence populations in jail is 59 days. Really, it's kind of apples and oranges, but it gives you something to think about. So let's expand this a little bit by looking how pretrial services affects the jail population and the financial gains from a reduced population. This slide shows the average daily inmate population at the jail from 2016 to last year. There are a couple footnotes at the bottom. As you can see, 2017, it was a high year. The jail had hit the high count of 497 inmates. The warden reports that that's overcrowded and a danger zone because when the population hits 500, the jail needs to look at opening another housing unit, which places a financial burden on the county. Also noted are the COVID years from April of 2020 to March of 2022. During that time, the jail was restricting commitments in an effort to reduce the spread of COVID. They were not accepting people with misdemeanor charges during that time. As you can see, that kept the population down during those years. The last footnote shows when pretrial services started in May of 2023. So you're probably looking at this and asking yourself, are pretrial services really decreasing the population? Because the numbers are down pre-COVID, but they're on an upward trend. Once you get into 23 and 24, they're starting to rise again. Well, the numbers are a little bit deceiving in that way because the jail, as you know, sells beds to other jurisdictions when the bed count allows for it. So remember, the jail wants to stay under that 500 head count. This slide shows the average number of daily beds sold to other jurisdictions. Prior to COVID, the opportunity to sell beds wasn't there because the head count was high. The jail didn't keep records of daily beds sold, but the warden estimates between 12 and 15 was the average daily number of beds sold to other jurisdictions from 2016 until 2022. As you can see, the average daily number of beds sold started to increase in 2023, which corresponds with pretrial services starting in May of 2023. And then in 2024, when pretrial services was at full force, the average daily number of beds sold to other jurisdictions ballooned to 57. So we put this all together, and I think this slide shows the true impact of pretrial services on the jail population. This is the average daily population of just Cumberland County inmates. So the inmates from other jurisdictions that the county is profiting on are not included. As you can see, the trend line is decreasing. As of this week, the Cumberland County prison, the inmate population of just Cumberland County inmates was 299. 55 or the additional beds were sold to other jurisdictions, making a total population of 354 inmates, well under the 500 inmate count threshold that increased cost of the county. So if we put those together, you can see how they work in combination.
It's a great way to get behind the data and dig through it a little bit more than taking the surface initial slide, you know. So, and those other prisoners that we are housing are has been very helpful to the budget for the prison over the past year.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that here.
Okay.
In this slide, and you can see the cost to administer pretrial services is over $173,000, and that covers the first year salary and benefits of the 2 new pretrial officers. The blue bar shows the income from 42 average daily beds sold to other jurisdictions, over $1.2 million. So 42 daily beds is the difference between the beds sold to other jurisdictions prior to pretrial services, when the average daily count was 15. And recently with pretrial services in place, when the daily count is 57. The beds were sold to local and federal jurisdictions at various rates. We had an average per diem of $83.91 in 2024. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say that I think the analysis shows evidence of improvements in recidivism and appearance rates for defendants ordered into pretrial services. The analysis also shows that the low-risk population previously incarcerated in CCP while awaiting trial are now being safely supervised in the community by pretrial service probation officers. By supervising pretrial defendants in the community, the jail population has been reduced, essentially eliminating the pre-COVID concerns of opening an additional housing unit to overcrowding. The jail has used this opportunity to sell more beds to other jurisdictions, which has provided a financial windfall for the county. Moving forward, additional analysis will be conducted in the upcoming years to ensure the program is providing the desired results. I would just like to point out, though, that the probation staff are the reason for this success. They've done an extraordinary job following the model that was put in place, working with the 10 MDJs and the common police court judges in the county to make sure that the court's directives are carried out. And probably the most important, working with each person placed on pretrial services to make sure their individual needs are identified and addressed through the pretrial process. It's really set the stage for a favorable adjustment for these people whenever they're finally sentenced and put on court supervision. So it's the pretrial process has helped out the post-sentence process as well. So are there any questions?
Well, while I'm a numbers person and this is a gross revenue and there are costs associated with housing those inmates, it certainly is more than adequately covering the cost of the staffing required to do this, to run this program. My question, Darby, would be at what level would you see where you're going to need additional staff? Do you think the 2 individuals you have currently are, as long as the population that you're supervising continues to be about the same mix, about the same numbers, you'll be good with 2 staff for a while?
You may recall when we started the program, we had, as you said, 2 staff. One was a supervisor and one was a probation officer. We actually pulled, because of what we're doing with evidence-based practices and how we work caseloads now, we were able to pull a person from our probation staff. So we had 2 probation officers and 1 supervisor.
Okay.
And actually we pulled another person, a half, 3/4 position, and that is the OIC probation officers. Numbers are a little bit low there. So we've pulled them over to pretrial services. So right now we're kind of juggling things. I think we're adequate now. I know that, we'll see where the numbers are. We have some MDJs that participate. We have some that don't. We're going to still encourage all of them to participate. We'll see where the numbers go from there.
So the positions you just outlined, they're all covered by that 173.
Yeah, the 2 positions.
2 positions.
Yeah, because they were new positions. We came and we started pretrial service. The other ones were existing positions, yes.
Okay.
In probation.
Okay. But their cost is now charged to pretrial services.
I don't know if it's split up that way, like budgeting. I'm not sure. I have to check on that.
Right.
Darby,
Darby,
you mentioned, oops, go ahead, Jean.
thanks. Hey, Darby, do you have some reasons why MDJs are choosing to not participate? And is there a way that you can get past that barrier?
Yeah, I think it was, in 2023, it was new. I think they probably wanted to see where this was. I know that Tiffany Ryan, who's the supervisor, and I went to just about all the MDJs. We reached out to all of them and were welcome probably at 7 or 8 of them. We met with them. I don't really know, now that we're a year and a half in, I think there's some good information. I've sent this information to the MDJs, so they were aware of the outcomes. But it just seems like there's a few that really are heavy with it somewhere. I've been talking to the court administration, Judge Brubaker. We do have, whenever court admin meets with MDJs, we try to get on the agenda to talk more about pretrial services. So hopefully we can pick up the pace a little bit.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And please let us know if there's any way we can assist with that.
Jean, that was going to be my line of questioning as well, but by and large, it has full support of the courts.
Yes.
So, certainly when we meet with the bench, this is something that we can please, encourage them to please support, and encourage the MDJs to support it as well.
Yes.
So, very good.
When we pitched the program to the MDJs, the target group that we said, if you have somebody in front of you that is kind of on the fence, you were thinking about putting them in jail or maybe not, consider pretrial services. So that's the group that we want. We certainly don't want people that, in the past weren't headed that way. We want people that were headed towards the jail and try to supervise them in the community.
Maybe you'll need to have one of the MDJs be a spokesperson for the improvement. I would think if they're reappearing to their court, it's better that people are showing up. It doesn't mess up their schedules as much.
Yes.
So
Judge Burbeck has been a champion of pretrial services, so he would probably be the one.
either one. Very good. Very good. Jean, do you have any other questions of Darby at this time?
I do not, Darby. Thank you so much for making this presentation. I think it's so important. I think it's important for the public to know about the good work that we do in terms of pretrial services to keep appropriate people out of prison in the community with their families and working, to save the cost to the taxpayer. And really, I mean, this is just so good for people. And the ripple effect goes both ways, right? We can have a ripple effect of making people healthier, helping them as they adjust to new things in their lives, or we can have the ripple effect of putting people in prison and they go back over and over again, and it affects everything that we do in the county. So it can go either way. And so I'm glad that we have a ripple effect that is really very positive. Thank you, Darby.
Thank you.
And it's unfortunate that there isn't a metric that could ever be used to show the difference of, by going through this program, how their lives were positively impacted by not being incarcerated. But certain that there are many cases that your folks have seen evidence of that.
Yes.
So, Gary, do you have any questions of Darby at this time?
Not right now, no. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Darby, for coming in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next up, is there any other business out? I have one small item that I wanted to make an announcement. Pennsylvania has joined with communities across the country on April 18th, 2025 for 2 Lights for Tomorrow. It's a national tribute making the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. Marking the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. We will not be making it again, and it's the beginning of America's journey toward independence. Inspired by the historic 2 by Sea lantern signal of 1775, 2 Lights for Tomorrow invites individuals, organizations, civic buildings, and homes to display 2 lights as a symbolic act of unity, reflecting on our shared past and looking ahead to a brighter future together. In Harrisburg, the Pennsylvania Capitol will be illuminated to mark the occasion to commemorate the anniversary. America 250 PA has created a program called 2 Lights for Tomorrow, and the county will be placing 2 lights at the historic courthouse, and 2 lights will spotlight the main courthouse on Friday night. We're encouraging folks to place 2 lights at their home or at your place of business. And if you would commemorate, be part of the program, and if you'd like to share your photos, we will host them on our social media page. So there's hashtags. I'm not a big hashtag person, Samantha, but I'll learn. Hashtag 2 lights for tomorrow, or hashtag TL4T. And that's a 4 as in numeric, and hashtag America 250 PA. So if you're able to participate, we'd welcome it. And if you see those lights on our courthouses, you will know what it's in reference to. So that is the only other piece of business I had. Is there anything else? If not, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So
We are adjourned. Thank you.